So when my daughter was in third grade, she got herself in trouble for passing a note in math class. And in the note, she wrote, "I hate this worksheet factory, don't you?" And while I found that kind of beautiful in its resistance, I also wanted to have a conversation with her about how she might communicate her message so that her teacher could actually hear what she was saying. So in the car ride home, we had this kind of conversation, and she was adamant. She was telling me, "Daddy, I just don't understand why we have to do so many worksheets." So I said, "Well, you know how you have to rehearse for your ballet recitals or practice for your swim meets? You know, worksheets are kind of like that. They're practice. They give you practice." She wasn't buying it at all. So I said, "Okay, well, what if you kind of throw yourself into math? Maybe you'll find an interesting idea in there. Just give it a chance." So she agreed. A couple weeks later, she got herself in trouble again in math class. This time the class was talking about duration. And you know, duration problems like Sophia starts reading at 2:45 and ends reading at 3:42. How much time did Sophia spend reading? But before the teacher transitioned into the worksheets, she asked the class, "Does anyone have any questions about time?" So my daughter raised her hand and said, "Yeah, I have a question about time. Where does the time from yesterday go? I mean, what happens to it?" The teacher really didn't like that question. So again, in the car ride home, she was telling me this, and she said, "No, really, I'm interested in this question. How come you think it's a good question, but my teacher didn't?" So again, I tried to have this conversation. I said, "Well, Olivia, for starters, you're in a third grade math class. This is not a philosophy seminar, so there's that. And remember, a couple weeks ago, you passed that note about the worksheet factory. You know, maybe your teacher thought you were trying to kind of get out of the worksheet. But, you know, also sometimes when teachers ask questions, they already have an answer in mind. They're kind of expecting something. So maybe you caught your teacher off guard." And my daughter said, "I don't get it. Why would they ask questions if they already know the answers? I mean, why don't they just tell us the answers? And why do they ask us our ideas if they really don't want to hear them? I just don't get school." And while my daughter kind of struggled with the discourse that happens in the classroom and still kind of doesn't really accept that kind of pattern of talk, what she learned in those experiences is that passing a note is a risk. And also, asking a question that's unexpected or sharing a unique perspective is also a risk. But not all risks are the same. Some are good, some are bad, and some are what I call beautiful. So a good risk is when the potential benefits outweigh the potential costs. Asking for help when you need it, that's a good risk. Now, you run the hazard of maybe appearing less competent when you ask for help, but when you do so, it's actually the way to get better, to actually increase your competence. So that's a good risk. A bad risk is just the opposite. It's when the potential costs outweigh the potential benefits. So, you know, poking a grizzly bear that's starving with a stick, probably a bad risk and a bad idea. So what's a beautiful risk? A beautiful risk is also when the potential benefits outweigh the potential costs. But a beautiful risk stands the chance of making a positive and lasting contribution to others. Now, there are many folks who have taken beautiful risks, like Rosa Parks, or the unnamed protester in Tiananmen Square. But beautiful risks don't have to be legendary. A young person who leaves the safety and comfort of a friend group to stand next to a kid who's alone, alienated, or picked on, that's a beautiful risk. And that takes a lot of courage, more courage than I had when I was a kid. So the question is, how can we take risks more systematically? What if we found a way to do this? In my work with my students at Innovation House at the University of Connecticut, I've developed something I call legacy challenges. They're opportunities to take beautiful risks. So a legacy challenge is based on 4 simple but very powerful questions. The first is, what is the problem? And so I invite students to identify problems that they care about, that they think are important. And sometimes they're problems that maybe no one else sees. The second question is, why is this a problem? So students are invited to think about, who does this problem impact? Who would we help if we solve this problem? What would happen if we don't do anything about it? Will it get worse? Will it get better? Will it stay the same? The third question is, what are we going to do about it? So in this way, students get to address the problem in their own way. And because it involves what are we going to do about it, they have to think about, who can I partner with to make sure that I can make an impact? And the final question is, what lasting contribution will we make? So from the outset, they will be thinking about, how can I build sustainability into my solution? How will I ensure that the work I do lives on even when I graduate? Now, legacy challenges are just one example of the way young people can take risks. But there are multiple other possibilities. So I think the challenge for all of us is to ask ourselves each day, how can I encourage and take a beautiful risk today? Thank you. So I think we'll open it up. Thank you, Giovanni, for your intro. And if you want to be the MC of Q&A, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. So